Good to see you, Pat. Welcome to AUTOSPORT International 2012. You're back at the coalface, aren't you, properly with Marussia? And I guess you've got quite a challenge ahead of you to bring what is essentially a very young team up to the front.
Yeah, it is. It's an enormous challenge, and it's one I relish. The Marussia team, which has grown out of Virgin Marussia, may have been racing for a couple of years, but in my mind, it's really a bit of a start-up. And we sort of took over on July the 4th to start reorganising the team and to bring it under one roof and to put in a new design group. Great little team. It's absolutely tiny by Formula One standards. It's a great challenge. There's an awful lot to do. It's a long journey, but thoroughly enjoying it. It
must be very, very hard to even contemplate getting on an even footing with the likes of McLaren and Ferrari and Red Bull and the sheer number of people and the resources behind them.
Yeah, it's, I wouldn't say it's hard to contemplate. I spent a lot of time contemplating it. Doing it is a different matter. And you're quite right. You know, the Marussia Formula One team in total is about 170 people at the moment. And you compare that with Red Bull, it's sort of 650, and Lotus and Mercedes, people like that at 550. Yeah, there's a mountain to climb, but there's so much good spirit in the team, and so much ambition that it's going to be a lot of fun doing it.
Do you believe that you're starting from a good place? Fundamentally, are the concepts and the philosophies at the team the right ones?
Well, of course, being a startup, it's difficult to say what the sort of concepts and the philosophies of the team are. From a strategic point of view, they're very, very good. From an engineering point of view, they're very immature. And there's a lot to do there. And one of the very good strategic things that we've done is to form an alliance with McLaren. And when I sort of looked at where Marussia wanted to get to and how we were going to get there, the one thing that was obvious was that we had to do something different. We weren't going to achieve the timescales that were required if we just slowly built up. So the strategic partnership with McLaren is very important to us, and it's not a quick process, but it will make it a little bit quicker than maybe has been done in the past, I hope.
What sort of things have you said to the team? You joined sort of halfway through year 2 and you're going into year 3. What sort of things have you had to say to them?
Well, the main thing was really to look at the engineering side and to get that integrity back into the engineering, to look at everything we did, to question how we did it. For example, in conjunction with McLaren, we started the wind tunnel program now. Everything was being done in CFD prior to that, and it wasn't a question of kicking out CFD. I'd be the last person to do that because it's a fabulous process, but I wanted to add the integrity of checking it through the wind tunnel and doing things like that. So it's really just a question of getting everyone aligned, empowering people, which is very important, I think, in a team, is to give the decision making all the way down the line and just get everyone working together. And so far it's going well.
Was it a case of Nick Worth, who of course was behind the all CFD car, was it a case of Nick having to be seen to be falling on his sword and the team taking a new direction technically?
No, not at all. I think Nick had done an awful lot of good in setting things up, and he was working within the resources that were given to him. I've taken a slightly fresh approach, and I don't think anyone's fallen on their sword. I certainly hope not.
Okay, good. Marussia is involved, of course. They're a serious entity. What sort of things can they bring to the team? How can they help drive it forward?
Well, they're a very ambitious organisation. Marussia is largely the sort of vehicle of a guy called Andrei Chegakov, who has made a lot of money in Russia through the electronics industry. That's his background. And he really wants to spread the word throughout Europe of what Russia is all about. And the ways he's doing it is producing a Russian sports car, which will be launched towards the back end of this year, 2012. And also through involvement with the Formula One team. So there's some very real ambitions there.
I guess what you need is someone who is hugely enthusiastic, who with a sound financial footing. That's how to drive it forward, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. I mean, Formula One's an expensive business, and I think to sort of look at this idea of one person funding a team, it's very difficult. We've seen it with Force India, where recently they've had to bring in extra investment. And I wouldn't like to think that one person is funding a Formula One team. That's not a long-term future. We've got to bring partners on board, and we've got to make ourselves into a proper operating company.
You've seen a lot of change in Formula One in your time. You started, obviously, with the likes of Tolman, which was very much a privateer team, which morphed into Benetton, and then full manufacturer status with Renault. Do you think Formula One is heading in the right direction? Are we going to be seeing more of these sort of privateer-type teams?
Well, I think it's heading in a much better direction than it was, say, 10 years ago, when it really was heading towards manufacturers or nothing. I think Formula One went through some unfortunate times, and I think the cigarette advertising brought a huge amount of money into the sport. It was replaced by the manufacturers, and I think everyone got a little bit arrogant, a little bit complacent, and in recent years I think we've seen that, and things like the resource restriction, which has been brought in by FOTA, which is a real genuine attempt to try and cap some of the costs and make the sport more relevant, I think have been really good. And providing the sport continues in that direction, with or without FOTA, I'm happy.
Okay, you're obviously hard at work now in this off season, trying to get the new car together. What sort of challenges do the regulation tweaks for 2012 present for you?
Well, they're probably not too bad at the moment. Obviously, one of the major changes for 2012 is that the blown diffuser, which has been the sort of talking point of 2011, has gone away with new regulations as to where the exhausts are positioned. And for a small team like us, that's not a bad thing, because it was an incredibly complex system. It was very difficult to understand. It was very difficult to get the engine mapping to work with the chassis and things like that. So I would even argue that in a few directions, things are a little bit easier this year. We've got a little bit of stability through 2012, 2013, until we move to the big changes in 2014, when we have a hybrid car, which is much more reliant on electrical energy than it is now. We've got to work towards that. But the great thing with Formula One is you can sit here in January and you say, okay, this is happening, that's happening. And by the time March comes along, everything's different, because someone's come up with something new and you have to start looking again. And that's why Formula One's so attractive.
Do you think enthusiasts could argue that the hybrid systems and the small capacity turbo engines are seen as a dumbing down of Formula One? We want lots of power, lots of noise.
No, absolutely far from it. When the hybrid systems first came in, the original KERS system, I guess I was typical of a lot of people, and certainly typical of a lot of engineers, where you felt that, KERS is for someone else. Yes, we've got to be green, but my neighbour can do it. I don't want to do it. And I think as I started to work with the systems, I actually saw the potential. I won't get too technical, but the internal combustion engine, it's a great thing. It's been developed over the last 100 years to be extremely efficient, but it's not very efficient, and there are lots of things we can do. Now, whether you stand on the soapbox of CO2, whether you stand on the soapbox of what's happening with oil supply and whether we'll run out, or whether you simply stand on the soapbox of the fact that oil and energy costs are just getting very, very high, doesn't matter what approach you take, the fact is that there's one thing that will solve all of these problems, and that's to be efficient. And I think it's time in Formula One we really push that message. And the 2014 powertrain is going in that direction, a much better efficiency. For every kilogram of fuel or litre of fuel that we use, we will go a lot further. And that's something that's going to come into the road cars in the same way that the technology that's in road cars now has come from racing. And it's going to make every single person better off.
I think Formula One can't be seen to be irresponsible and wasteful, can it? That's towing the party line is important.
Yeah, that's absolutely true, and it's what I refer to as the fur coat syndrome. No one would walk down the high street now wearing a fur coat. It's not socially acceptable, and I think we've got to be very careful in motorsport that we don't get to that same sort of situation. We've got to be ahead of the curve. We've got to be leading, and we've got to show what we can do. And as automotive engineers, one thing we can do is we can contribute to energy efficiency. And as I said before, it doesn't matter where you come from. That's good for everyone.
It's possible to make this technology sexy, isn't it?
Oh, yeah.
When it started out, it wasn't, but it can be.
Absolutely, and perhaps that was the other thing that I learned, was that I really thought, the hybrid car, the Toyota Prius, it wasn't for the enthusiast. And I think as I really got to understand Kerr's cars a lot more, I realised that actually by combining the electric motor with the petrol engine, you really get the best of both worlds. And I think, when the high performance guys get into running hybrid cars, which will be very much of the sort of architecture of the 2014 Formula One car. I think your future Ferrari and your future supercar will be something like a small V6 turbo with a big electric motor on it. You'll be surprised because the acceleration is stunning. There really is a lot to be said for the electric power side of it. And I think people will realise that, this isn't just about energy saving. This is about motoring being fun. And that's why everyone here has come to this show.
Yeah, that's right. And what we see winning, of course, on the racetracks of the world on Sunday afternoons finds its way down to the showrooms of the world and what we all drive on the road.
Yeah, absolutely does. And I think we're very poor in Formula One for really sending that message. There are so many things that we do in motorsport that do find their way onto the road, particularly in this sort of area of increased efficiency. But in Formula One, we're so secretive, we don't tell people about it, and it's a real shame. And I think we've got to get that message out, that yes, we are improving the breed.
Okay, finally, 2012 car will be at Jerez on February 7. Will you be able to unveil it and give it a good thrashing?
Yeah, we're looking at doing the second test, actually, but it'll be ready. Lots of new things on it, as I say, a whole new organisation behind it. But big mountain to climb, but one I'm going to enjoy climbing.
And good to keep Timo Glock on board for the stability. And you've got Charles Peake coming along. He's a young rookie who's done well so far.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. And that will continue to be our philosophy for a while, to have someone like Timo, good experienced driver, a yardstick which we can judge ourselves by, and then to try and promote some young talent in the second seat. Jerome D'Ambrosio did a fabulous job this year. I really wish he was in Formula One next year, or in 2012 rather, next season, because he certainly deserves to be. But I think our role at the let's say the back end of the grid, I hope not totally at the back, but at the back end of the grid, I think part of our job is to promote the young drivers.
Okay, I know you'll do a good job, Pat. Good to see you. Look out for Marussia coming up the grid in 2012. Ladies and gentlemen, Pat Symonds.
Thank you.
Thank you, Pat.